Hi there. I just want to very quickly give you an overview of what the Trauma Continuum is all about. It was created by me in around 2014 to try and give voice to and try and help explain the different interventions needed, the different things needed to help the different people from different backgrounds. One of my biggest frustrations is that people often go, yes, I work in trauma, but actually when they say trauma, they might well be talking about type 1 trauma and not type 3 trauma. And there's different qualifications, there's different backgrounds, there's different understanding for each individual type. I have quite a few emails from people saying, can I use your continuum in my training? Can I use your continuum in this dissertation I'm writing? And I'm like, of course you can, if you cite it properly, but would you like to, first of all, check with me that you've got it right? And quite often people will talk about it in a similar way to other tiers. CAMS has a tier pyramid type way of viewing different levels of the severity of difficulty. There's lots of different stages and types and continuums of a kind. But the reason I'm passionate about my continuum is that it's actually very quickly to use to assess, am I the right person to try and help this person? Or do I need somebody from a different background or a different qualification or a different lens to look at this problem in order to be recovery focused? You see, if we're just sort of doing a job and getting on with it, we're not recovery focused. So our objective is just to have a good time with the person we're working with, child, young person or adult. We're just trying to have a nice time. We're trying to give them support. We're trying to help them, which for type 1 trauma is probably sufficient for them to recover from their type 1 trauma. But when that's type 2 or 3 trauma, that is not sufficient. And when we're recovery focused, we're actually trying to get to the place where there are no trauma symptoms causing them life interruptions any longer, that they have a sense of power over their body, their emotions, and their mind, rather than being powerless to trauma symptoms and to the cycle of the difficulties that can be left within a person who has experienced difficult times. Let me quickly explain it. Type 1 trauma, it's the kind of one-off incident where you still have words. Generally, a child, young person, or an adult can go, oh, yesterday was a bad day. I had a car crash. I heard that my friend's being divorced. Maybe a loved one died or a pet died. Maybe it was, I'm going to hospital and I'm feeling nervous about it. Or I've just come back from hospital. I felt very traumatized by not having visitors and not just it being so scary. Those one-off incidences are called type 1 trauma because there's words. The person can express what they're feeling. They can use words to describe it. There isn't shame and issues around loyalty and threats that stop them talking. All we need to do is create a positive relational environment for them to talk, and they can recover from it. Often they'll need a whole year maybe of us offering that safe place, that cup of tea, that supportive listening ear, but that's enough. Type 2 trauma, however, is a multiple trauma. It's something that doesn't happen as a one-off, it's happening all the time. Whether that's domestic abuse, whether that's sexual abuse, physical abuse, some lower levels of physical neglect and poverty. So those kind of things are regular, repetitive things where the child then has a changed brain. And then as they go into being a young person or an adult, their brain is actually changed around being hypervigilant and being agitated or being shut down, or all sorts of other ways of coping with the continual sense of what's going to happen next. Who's going to hurt me next? What awful thing is going to happen next? And so when somebody is in type 2 trauma, we need to have an understanding that then it's impacting their mind and their thinking, their emotions. They will have big, strong emotions that unless they've been living with a therapist or living with somebody that really understands, the likelihood is they would have pushed down a lot of those big feelings, which are now causing a sense of discomfort, either in their physical body or in their subconscious, which might cause lots of reactive behaviors and behaviors that they might be surprised by themselves. Type 2 is something that more therapists are used to working with, psychotherapists. But usually mentors need to work alongside psychotherapists. Occupational therapists would need to work alongside psychotherapists, because while an occupational therapist or a mentor can actually target the body, can target some of the emotions, actually the subconscious needs somebody who's trained in subconscious understanding from a psychological model in order to unpack the subconscious without causing further distress. And then there's type 3, and I don't know any other model that includes type 3 as a really important group of people that have experienced not just multiple trauma, but multiple trauma in the first 5 years as well. So these are the kind of children that if you wanted to, one professional to another say, well, I'm working with this child, but they are, you'd struggle to put that into words. Whereas in type 1 trauma, you'd say, well, their parents have just divorced, or they've just had to move school, or they've just had a bunch of different medical interventions, or their house caught fire, or they had a burglar. In type 2, you'd go, yeah, I'm afraid they're a survivor or a victim, depending on what they want to be called, of sexual abuse, of domestic abuse. When it comes to type 3, usually you're left going, well, they've experienced domestic abuse, they've experienced sexual abuse, they had early neglect in their first years. Actually, they had a hospital intervention when they were aged 3, and the list goes on. For those children and young people, no longer is it like type 1, where they can talk and they go, this happened. It's not like type 2, where they might have some words, but most of it is lodged within their subconscious and their body. And so you need specialist help. By type 3, their coping mechanisms are so complex and multifaceted that actually you really do need to be somebody that understands complex trauma. And when you have a professional that comes in to help somebody in a type 3 trauma situation who is either somebody that's just going to help the body but doesn't understand the subconscious, or somebody that's going to help with their thinking, like CBT, that's going to potentially cause more shame and more escalation of trauma symptoms, because actually it's more complicated than that. So I am passionate about the trauma continuum because I believe passionately that many organizations are actually working with client groups that they're not equipped to work with. And so they're not being recovery focused. So the child or young person or even adult will end up saying, well, I've been to so many different places for help, but I haven't got better yet. I'm still very similar to how I was, although I enjoyed the time with that organization. When we can start at the point of assessment, where we actually know, am I qualified to work with type 1, 2, or 3? Or do I need to refer? Is the best option just to say, look, I can't be recovery focused with you, but I can have a cup of tea and support you while you walk through a journey of recovery from type 3 trauma. We need to know what our role is, who we are, what we're qualified to do in order to be recovery focused, so we can be a positive team around the person that's needing the support to recover. But let's not slap the word trauma over any individual person ever and think that we're talking around the same person, with the same problems, with the same challenges, with the same recovery map going forward. Type 1, type 2, and type 3 are vastly different from each other, and their recovery looks different, and what they need looks different. So I love the trauma continuum. Feel free to use it. You can cite it for 2014 with my name, and let's see a whole bunch of people helping people recover from trauma. Hope that helps you.